Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Meconoman at YouTube with another model video. Today we will be building the second Figure-Rise bust depicting the character Fumina from Gundam Build Fighters, this time in her ending theme clothing. The kit does share parts from the original model and has parts for the new torso, so there'll be some familiar runners. As usual, it is quite expensive and definitely goes over the $30 mark due to the complexity behind the casting and the injection moulding of the eyes with the clear bits and all the other colours in one single foul swoop. Very complex. See how it goes. Straight off the bat, as we crack open this ST sized box, we've greeted with about 4 runners, 5th including the eyes and a few of the stickers. Having a closer look to the eyes, we can see up to 4 different type of plastics mixed together, and the back you can see how the mold would slide and have the different components coming together. Has been done before in previous kits dating back to the late 90s, but it still fascinates me to this day. I don't know if it's been done before in this size until the Figure-Rise kits came into play. The instructions are brief, straight to the point, and cover the process very well, very streamlined, easy manner, fully rendered and coloured with different arrows and numbers. There's no way that you can really stuff it up, and the rest of it is in this nice monochrome shaded tone. All the pegs are massive. It definitely requires colour separation. The build process is extremely simple. This is more relying off the fact that toy collectors will be getting their hands over it opposed to modelers. Though repainting and whatnot, which we'll be doing, is the case by loosening up the pegs and gluing it together. Where it is going to be separatable for painting, that's not too tight, so not much in the way of modifications is required for that. We don't have any seam lines at the stage for the torso, though the sides of the ribs where they've got the detail for the white areas we're going to fill, sand, and mask and paint our own designed lines, so that doesn't interrupt the gloss coat for later. The base is very dynamic. I do enjoy the very heavy detailing to contour around the body. The clothes fold, navel, armpit and shoulder areas is just beautifully sculpted. The light catches quite naturally, so if you do paint it in one colour or leave it in bare plastic, which most will do, especially once we get to the hair and skin tones, a simple matte coat and away you go really. There's just not much to this. Once we start getting to the scale modelling aspect and painting, we start to hit a brick wall and the work gets very difficult with the hair follicles, ponytail, and especially the arms. Shout out definitely to how well the hands are sculpted, probably a bit too defined in a manly fashion. All that aside, they do need to be glued together, and there's very obvious seams no matter what direction you go into, including the front, and required a bit of cementing, filling with super glue, and a follow up in basic type putty. This was sanded about 24 hours later. Once we start getting to the scale modelling aspect and painting, we start to hit a brick wall and the work gets very difficult with the hair follicles, ponytail, and especially the arms. Shout out definitely to how well the hands are sculpted, probably a bit too defined in a manly fashion. All that aside, they do need to be glued together, and there's very obvious seams no matter what direction you go into, including the front, and required a bit of cementing, filling with super glue, and a follow up in basic type putty. This was sanded about 24 hours later. This is the collection of all the parts that were glued and puttied up, followed by follow-up putty. Mr. Dissolve putty was used onto the torso where you had the cutout line for the white stripe. This was sanded back, primed, and followed up a second point where bits of putty might have been dug up from harsh sandpaper, or my job wasn't good enough. Everything is quite flush and level for a gloss coat. The rest of the steps are a process of my favourite prime follow-up process. Being styrene, I've used Tamiya Grey Lacquer Primer or Surfacer, and once I saw bits of gaps and imperfection, I've used a Gundam marker, the paint markers, finally got a use for them now, and highlighted where these errors are for later inspection. Filled them up with the correct type of putty, and as these floors are a lot finer and we're not going to be removing a lot of material, finer sandpaper from 400 grit onwards is used to remove that material and have it flat for a second or a third round of primer, circle the problems again, and then putty for another go. This has worked very well for gloss surfaces. Once we had a coat of acceptably smooth, ideal grey primer across all the surfaces, a series of lacquer paints, mostly Mr. Colour, SMS, Gaia Note, were selected and painting the colours in shading gradients. I'll use about 2 tones for the lighter colours. Example, the white would be painted grey, and then from the top and mid end I'll angle and shade on white, making sure the folds would be masked by facing them downwards and still pertaining to have that grey colour as if light is cascading down the body. The hair and other bits and pieces is multiple tones and more gradient shading. The flesh is done in my usual manner that I tackle garage kits, and there's about 3 to 4 tones. Looking at the Gaia Note range, where they've got more pale and tanned fleshes available mostly for the anime girl figures, and the Mr. Beautiful Girl colour set released by Mr. Colour. Those two together, I think I've achieved the most interesting and best shaded flesh on this piece, and look forward to practicing it further. The ribs were painted white, and the stylish stripe she's got down the side of her outfit was masked using blue tack. I would paint the rest of it black, 2 shades, really dark grey, and the highlight areas in black, or the low lights I should say. Removed it, glossed it, and got a sufficient look as white is near impossible to paint over black, so the black was painted later. It just worked out the mask was easier figured out that way. Each of the clothed items received a couple of coats of gloss and allowed multiple days to dry and fully harden. There was a few dust fibres and imperfections that appeared, and I buffed and sanded those out, starting at 2000 grit sandpaper, working our way up to 7000 grits over a couple of steps. This would leave with a near matte finish, a couple of more gloss coats, and it had a very nice deep mirror look. Everything was assembled and glued with wood or PVA glue inside to hold it together permanently in one place. As a finishing step at this pace, I used what's known as 5-second fix. It's a liquid resin for bonding 2 surfaces together with a clear glue and using a UV light to harden it. I used this to draw on a lens on the eyes so it levels perfectly with the flesh, and I strategically placed a ton of droplets at the tips and bottom of the hair, a couple of dribbles along the flesh of the arms and down the body as if she came out of the water, and glossed it again. Came out very interesting. I probably could have shaped the droplets a little better. I've never done wet objects before and should have downloaded more reference material, though it's an interesting trend that I will try to do on a bathing suit, sweaty or wet item or person again. mounted on the matte base and putting that little nice label sticker on it. This absolutely concludes the build. The little bit of shading of the dark grey and black and the greys and white contrasting each other is a very, very nice step, and you've got that very strong contrast of the glossy wetsuit and the near matte flesh, with just some little strategic areas dusted on with gloss showing evaporation. Being playful with the finishes, there's a bit of a story to be told of the character swimming or whatnot. It's very playful and a lot of fun to muck around with that. I enjoyed this build. At a quick glance, very happy with it. Came out very nicely. There's a couple of things I would have changed to improve it a bit, not to rush it at the end. It's nothing that would be easily pointed out, though definitely intend to do more figurative bust stuff. And when more Figure Eyes items that I like do come out, I'll purchase them and build them. I did buy the Hatsune Miku set, and as that character has a lot of different skins and outfits and designs or whatnot, that could have an alternative paint flow that would not be the same as out of the box scheme, much like this one and the past model. I've also seen some outrageous kit bashes and scratch builds in changing the clothing items and the designs and making them as zombies or steampunk queens or something. So the opportunity to be playful is there. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. Please have a look at the description section for further links, sources, information. We have a Facebook page linked in the description section. There's our regular uploads and updates, as well as what goes on YouTube is mirrored over there. Our work in progresses, all that sort of stuff. And we will catch you guys next time.